Are you interested in learning how to create a mobile application and don't know where to start? This is the right video for you. I'm going to show you how to create this stunning looking application on your screen. It's a chat application where you come in and can input your name and then send a message over to random people and they can respond to those messages too. So basically, it's a chat room full of random people who are basically communicating with themselves. This is the right starting point for you to learn how to create a mobile application. All right, let's go ahead to create the mobile application. The first thing we're going to do here is to create the front end of the application, which we're going to do by installing Flutter. If you don't have Flutter installed already, you need to head over to flutter.dev. Then you can locate this button that says Get Started, click on it, and it's going to bring you to this page. Then you can now decide to pick which platform you want to install Flutter on. You could decide to go for Windows. I'm on a Mac, so I'll go for the Mac. The steps are pretty straightforward, and I'm going to suggest that you go through the entire documentation to get it installed on your PC. Once you're done with the installation and setup, head over to your terminal or CMD on your PC. Then type in the command flutter doctor, which is going to actually verify if you've properly installed everything, all the requirements that you saw in the documentation, if you really went through the documentations. All right, you can see that everything is fine on my end. I have Xcode installed, Flutter installed, Android Studio installed, VS Code installed, which means everything is fine. Now let's move ahead to create our new Flutter project since we've successfully installed all the requirements. So I'm going to change my directory to the projects directory because I have this project directory where I keep all my projects. You can have the same thing too, and then you move to that directory and then type in the command that I'm going to type right now, which is make directory mkdir, and I'm going to call it chat room. I think I already have it created already. So what I'm going to do right now is remove the directory and then recreate it again so that we start afresh. Clear the screen, code chat room. This will open the chat room in VS Code for me. And you can see that it's a completely empty project. It's new. I just created it right now. Has nothing in it. Let me zoom in my screen a little bit so that you can see my screen clearly. Then the next thing I will do is create two folders. The first one is going to be the front end of the application, and the front end application is going to be our Flutter application, and then there's going to be a back end application. Now I'll open this in integrated terminal, and then I'm going to type the command flutter create dot. Dot just literally means the current directory, so I am creating the app called front end. This will create the project in no time, and then you should be able to see the structure of the project here. We're going to focus on the lib directory, which is containing the entry point of our application, and it's basically where we're going to write all the codes that we need for designing the application and also implementing all the functionalities we want the application to have. Let's go ahead to install the required extensions for building Flutter applications on VS Code. Head over to the extension and search for Flutter, which is an extension that will give you support for debugging your application and everything you need. Make sure it's exactly the same one from thatcode.org as you see it here. I've already installed it, so I don't need to do that. But you'll see the install options, so I recommend you click on it. Once the installation is completed, search for that. That is an extension that's going to be automatically installed for you when you install the Flutter extension. If it's not installed, then please try to install it. Once it's all installed successfully, you might want to restart your VS Code. So I'd suggest you close it and then open it again, or you're going to see a reload button that you should click on somewhere here. If you've done that, then we're good and we can start writing our code. Head over to the main.dat file again, and then you're going to see that we have some code here written already for us. This code is just the entry point of the application, and this is just to show you a demo app that you can actually play around with. Once it's all set up, go down to the bottom of your screen here. You should be able to see this button. Click on it and it's going to give you a list of devices. I'm going to click on this, or you can decide to go with the Android emulator if you are on a Windows PC. If you're on a Mac, then you can open a simulator depending on what operating system you're using. I'll close this sidebar and then I'll open this other sidebar here just so that we have a little bit of space for the simulator. And then what do we do next? I'll run the app in debug mode, which is going to take a while, as you can see down here. And this is what it looks like. Just a counter app. You click on a button and then it counts, and that's all. I'm going to get rid of the entire code and then we will recreate our own in a different folder, or a different file rather. So I'm going to call it app and then create a new folder called src, because that's how I like to do it. And then it's going to be an app file in it, which is going to be a stateless widget. So basically Flutter is all widgets. So this is how you create a widget. We need to now return a material app. The material app is where we get to define the theme of the application, the color of the application, the text styles, and so on. First thing I'm going to start with is the primary swatch color, which is going to be red, just to see what it looks like, not necessarily because it should be red. Now I'm going to go ahead to import the app here because we can't use it here without importing it. Down here you can see that it says that we've got two problems. I'll click on these and then you see that the name is called my app instead of app, and then I'll import it, and now we should have no more problems. Let's create the home page of our application, which is going to be the chat room. That's the first thing the user actually sees, and it doesn't exist yet. So we're going to create a new file called chatroom.dat, and that's exactly where we're going to put a stateless widget called chatroom. This chatroom is going to return a scaffold because that is how it works in Flutter. And the scaffold is going to have a body, which is where we can put a text at the center of the page called chatroom. Then we'll head over to the application back, and then we need to import the chat room here. If we import the chat room here, you should be able to see chat room on your screen once you save. Let's get rid of the second problem in the application, which is the unused import here. And then we can go back to the chat room, and I'm going to write a comment here saying this is the chat room because this is where we're going to put the chat room. And then we create an app bar that is going to have the title, which is going to be a text widget called chat room. Now you can remove the constant, add the constant here instead, and then you should be able to see the text at the title. Now let's make a new folder. I'm going to call this folder utils, and the folder is going to contain a file called palette.dat. The palette is going to be an abstract class which is going to contain the colors of our application. All I need to do is paste the code because I already created it. Remove the unnecessary comma, import material.dat. I don't need this file open again, so I'll just close it. Let's change the background color of the app bar. It's going to be the color we created in the palette. No, this should be, let's go ahead to import palette first so that it automatically suggests the background color. Now you can see that it has changed. Go back to the app and let's change these to material 3. And the style has turned into something else because we can no longer see the text clearly. So I'm going to create an app bar theme. All right, then I'll specify the background color here, which is going to be palette.background color. This should be a constant to place flutter. Let's go ahead to style the title, which should be title text style, and then it should take a text style which has a property called color, which we can set to white. And I think the text looks very small, so I'll go ahead to change the font size to probably maybe 16 or even more than 16. Let's try 20 instead. And 20 looks a lot more better. Now let's replace the text we have at the center with a list view dot separator. The item count should be 2, and then we move the separator builder to the bottom. That's how I like it. And then we will set this to return a constant sized box.string for now. We don't really need the context, so we just put an underscore, remove the int, and then change this to an arrow to make it a single line. And this should do it. Now we're going to create a message card, which we don't have yet. And this is how we're going to do it. Create a new folder here called widgets. This is going to contain all the widgets that we will create in the application. The one we want now is called message card.dat. It's going to be a stateless widget called message card. Then we can replace the placeholder with a text widget, which is going to have the text message goes here, just for us to see that it works fine. Head over to this part, and then we need to import the message card. Add a constant in front just to place flutter. It works, and we have 2 messages to match the item count. Go back to the message card so that we can go ahead to style it. I'll get rid of the text widget completely, replacing it with a container, which I can now specify a color to be palette dot background color. Then I'll set the height to 100. Let's go back here and then add a padding here. Const edging set dot all, probably 10. Let's see what it looks like. This is okay for me. Then the next thing I'm going to do is to change the shrink, set a height to 10, and that will give us a nice space between the message boxes. Let's set the width of the message card to media query dot of context size, and then width multiplied by 0.8, which is going to give us 80% of the screen size. This is not going to take effect until we wrap this in an alignment widget and then set the alignment to alignment dot center left. Just exactly what I want. Add a little bit of opacity to the background color so it looks lighter than it is right now. Maybe 0.05. This should do just fine. Alright, here's what I'm going to do. I will create a new variable which is going to be a boolean called isMine, and basically this is going to be required. Nope. Instead, I'll make it false instead of required. Give it a default value. Now, this should help us determine what the color of the message should be. So if the message is mine, then the color should be maybe some kind of a blue-gray color, or else we're going to have this light color. I hope you get the idea. Let's see, I'll change this to true, and then you're going to see the color changes to the blue-gray color. But I'm going to leave it by default to false. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for the alignment. So I'm going to say if the message is mine, then we'll set the alignment to center right. And now if I set this to true, the message goes to the right end. If it's false, it goes back to the left. Let's get the actual data display on the screen, I mean the message. So let's create a new property called message, and then make it required so that the user would have to pass the message in, or probably wherever the message card is used, we get to pass the message in. And we need to output the message here as a child of the container. It's going to be a text widget, the message, and let's see, nothing shows up. Let's go back because we need to provide the message. So let's go ahead to set the required value. I'm just going to write hi here, and still doesn't show up. So let's go back to the message card. It looks like the text is light, definitely white. So let's change the text color to a dark one and see if the text displays on the screen. Let's say body medium, and then let's copy it with the color we want. So copy with color, colors dot black. Then we need to make sure that this is not null, or let's use our background color, and that should do it for us. All right, so now we have the image displaying clearly on the screen, but we need to also check if the message is mine. So mine is now referring to the current user. So if the message is the current user, then we change the text color to different text color so that it becomes a lot visible on the screen. Just how it works. Now let's see, we remove the height because we want the height of the container to depend on the content, and then we just need to add a little bit of padding just to give the message some breathing space. And I think this should be it, except for some decorations to probably add a rounded edges, just curved borders that will make the message card look nice. Let's see, border radius dot circular, and how many? Maybe 5. I think 5 should do. And let's add a comment here just to make sure that everything is spaced out correctly and easy for us to see. If we set this to true, we get this. If it's false, then it's the other way around. I hope you get the idea. Now, I think our UI looks perfect. Very, very perfect. And we can now create a model. which is going to be called the message model, which should describe what a message should look like. So we're going to say a message is going to have an ID, which should be a string. It should have a message, which is the actual message we're sending. I could call it text, but let's leave it as message for now. And then we need to know who is sending the message. So we're going to create a new class again called fake user, because we are making a fake user here. Just for the just to test out the thing, we're probably going to change the name of the class later. But then you need to install this data class generator, because this is what we're going to be using to generate the data class. And it's very, very important that you have it installed, and it has to come from .up. If it's not installed, then you have to click the install button. Now back here, what we're going to do here is we would generate the next model, which is the fake user, and it's going to be a class, and we'll call it fake user because that's what we are actually calling it already. We're referencing it before even creating it. Then it should have an ID. Every user is going to have an ID. The user is going to have a username, and we could add more data to this later on, but not now. Then I can now generate the constructor like this, and JSON serialization, and maybe some other methods like probably copy with. That's if we want to make a copy of the model. I like to do it this way. Then to string and equality. So if we have all of these, this is how I actually like to design my models. So I'm going to repeat the same thing here. But first of all, import the fake user, create the constructor, then do the JSON serialization. And after the JSON serialization, I want the copy weight and toString, then equality. That is how I like my data class to look like. And you're going to see why I need it to be this way in a short while. So let's head over to the chat room again. When you land on the chat room, what's going to happen? So what's going to happen here is we're going to create a fake list of messages, which should just serve as something that allows us to display a perfect UI of some kind of chart that doesn't exist here. So every message would have an ID, and we'll have the actual message or the actual text in the message. And then we'll have like a fake user, which is the user who sends the message, the sender. And this is going to have, the user is also going to have an ID and a name here. So we're saying this name is John Doe, because that's the name we're going to display on the screen, right? Let's create another message here, and this should have a different ID from the first one. So ID2, this is ID2, and then the name should change to Jane Doe, and this different message, hi. So just, you get the idea. Now in the list view, instead of just having the count hard coded, we're going to say the count comes from the message. So the length of the message is now the item count, and then we're going to get the actual message from the list of messages using the index that the item builder provides us. So we've got the message. Now we're going to grab the message and then pass the message onto the message card. All right, let's redesign the message card a little bit. Let's modify it. Let's change the message instead of string to be message, which is the actual model that we created sooner. So we're going to import that model. And then here we're going to say message.message, which is the actual string that we want to display as the message. And then when we go back here, this shouldn't be a constant. So we remove the constant because we're now passing a value that can actually change. Now let's look at what we're going to do next. We'll create a service, and the service is the guy that now allows us communicate with our database to get data back. And we're going to create the audit service. That is the first service that we need right now. And I just close these just so I can see clearly. So the audit service is the one that allows us authenticates the user or validates the user, um, and send requests to the server to know who the logged in user is. So you've got to log into the application, and once you're logged in, we know who you are. So we're going to create a variable or a state here that is called logged in user, which is going to be of type fake user. And we're going to hard code everything here just the way you see me do it, probably because we just want to test things out and see that the entire UI is properly built. And then later on, we'll go ahead to modify the code as soon as we create a server for the application. All right, so let's see how this works out. So we now have the logged in user. We're going to make it a private property, and then we're going to create a getter. The reason is because we don't want users from outside of, or we don't want the logged in user to be modified from outside of this class. So we're saying we create a new getter which is going to now give the outside world the thing we want. But first we need to employ this provider, which is a package that you can get from this website here. So just head over to pub.dev, install by copying this code, and when you go back here, open your terminal. When you go back to VS Code, open your terminal, paste the code that I just gave you, but you have to change your directory to the front end because that's where our Flutter application lives. And then you can paste the code, run it, and you're going to have it installed. Once it's been installed, the next thing we're going to do here is this. Let's close up all of these things and head over to the pub spec just to confirm that it's been installed. Let's see, I'll just remove a couple of these comments just to clean up the code a little bit. I'm not going to take off all the comments, just a little bit of them. And yeah, now you can see the package that we installed. That is exactly what we want, and it's perfect. You can see, you can compare the versions. So let's head over to the README section of the page again and then see what we need. I'm going to scroll down to where we have the multi-provider, but then I'm going to suggest that you read through this documentation properly. But don't worry, I'm going to make a new video on how to use this package. Now we'll go to the main the entry point of our application, which is the main.dat, and you look at the application here. We're going to cut what we have here, and then we're going to replace it with multi-provider, which takes a list of providers. So the providers is a list, so we have to pass a list, and then the next property here is going to be the child. That's app that we cut out. We're going to paste it back, and we now need to create a change notify provider. The change notify provider is a guy that's going to notify the rest of the application about changes when they occur. So what we're doing here is we're creating an abstraction. We're moving our state from the widgets and then putting them in the auth service here in this class called auth service. So this auth service has to extend the change notifier. And if we've done this, we just need to restart the application and everything is still going to be normal as it should be. Then we can do a little bit of modification, change this to a stateful widget. If we have a stateful widget, we can now create an initial state. We're going to move this from the build method. We're going to have it here. We want the logged in user to come from the provider. So we're going to create a state here called logged in user, which should be late fake user, just like that. Then we're going to create an initial state down here, which should set the logged in user. We don't need to do this, but come on, let's do this right now so that it's more clear. So we're going to say context.read auth service dot logged in user, just like that. And now we're going to use the logged in user in the message. So we're going to modify one of the messages to say the logged in user sent this message. So we're going to get rid of that fake user that we created there, and then we're going to pass the logged in user instead. But at this point, we don't have access to the logged in user. So we're going to say this shouldn't be final, and we cut out the message. It should be an empty message, list of empty messages. Then we can now set it here, down here, and we're going to restart the app, but nothing's going to change right now because we don't even expect anything to change right now. Yeah, that's true. We have the logged in user. We're going to use that logged in user here to modify the message card. And the message card is where we now determine if the user is the message is mine or not. So we're going to say by default it's set to false, yes, and then is mine is now going to be logged in user or message dot sender equal to the logged in user. So if the sender of the message is equal to the logged in user, then that is the user that owns the message, and so it's going to move to the right with the color, with the background color that is dark, or else it will go to the right with the light background color. So let's do some tweaks here. We're going to change this to a column widget, and then we want this to be the message, this should be the text, and we get rid of the comment up there. We're going to create a new text widget which should display the name of the sender. So we can say sender.username should be this, and this is not the desired result we want. So let's make sure that the cross-axis alignment is set to start. So cross-axis alignment dot start. That way, and then we'll copy the styles we have down here. Exactly what we want down here is what we want for the name of the sender. So let's do the same thing. And now we have the name of the sender displaying right there at the top of the screen. This is actually awesome. Let's see what other changes do I need to do here. Maybe reduce this to 10, padding to 10, and then let's set a different font weight for this. Maybe this should be bolder than the message itself, and I think this is nice now. And we just bring down the text size a little bit, and don't you think this is cool? I think this is cool. So let's move ahead to the text color, and let's see if we can scale the text color down a little bit, like decreasing the priority or the focus to the color. Now we have it looking good. At this point, I guess we can say we've done everything we need to do for the body of the chat room. So let's go ahead to see what we can do down here. I'm going to create the chat input field here. So we want the input field here because this is where the user can now input a message to be sent to other users in the chat room. So this is going to be in a safe area so that we can make sure that the text is visible on the screen. The text field is visible on the screen properly. And you can see I can input text here. And let's see, we will style it now a little bit. Let's go ahead to uh, add some paddings to it just to make sure that it doesn't touch the edge of the screen or whatever the edge is called. All right, so let's see that way, and now we have it away from the edge of the screen. All right, so let's go to the theme of the application. That should be in the app.dat file. This is where we are now going to style the input field. This is probably because it is the only input field we have in the application, and the theme allows you to decorate the input field anyhow you want it to be.
here, and if you do it here, it becomes universal and applies to every other part of the application. So we're going to start with the border. We need to provide an outlined input border, and I'm going to duplicate this and then call this enabled border because I it's completely different from the border. So we have an enabled border and we are going to style it. So we're going to say that the border radius should be very, very, very round. So let's say circular 50 pixel, and that's going to be completely round. It doesn't take effects because the border at this point the border is enabled, so we need it for the enabled border too, and we need to get rid of the constants that we have here. So let's copy this and paste it down here, and you can now see it. We have round edge corners, and then we can also change the color because it has this new purple color from the new material design. So let's go ahead and, or maybe the new Flutter kind of design thing. So let's go ahead and change the color by setting the border side to border side and set the color to the color of our application, so which is palette dot background color. And now the color should change. That way, I think I don't see it take any effect. Doesn't look like the color has changed, but let's see after restarting, did it change? I just copy it and then do it here too. And I think there is one more thing we're missing. So let's set the opacity to this just to make it lighter, and then we're going to create another border again, which is going to be the focused border, because when I click on the input field we still get the purple color, which we don't want at all. So let's use the focused border, and we will get rid of the opacity because we want it to look very, very thick than when it isn't clicked on. So right now, I don't see it take effect, but let's restart the app and see if it takes effect. All right. What am I missing? Oh, let's increase the width a little bit. Set it to 2, and I think it should work now. Yay! That is perfect. I think it works fine. And we now have our input field looking exactly the way we want it to look. Now we're going to set so a little bit of decoration here too, and this is going to be unique to this particular input field. And the decoration here is just to make it make it not dense, or dense rather. Right, so if we set it to dense, it's going to look a little bit smaller than it should look if you don't set the is dense to true. And then we need to add a prefix icon as our send button, a suffix icon instead, because we want the icon button on the right end. So the icon button is going to have nothing, an empty function as the onPress method, and then we need to set the icon to Cupertino.paper plane, just because we want the paper plane icon or as our send icon or as our send button. Import the Cupertino icons and then say paper plane. Please spell it correctly, manual. All right, so now it's been spelled correctly and we have it set correctly. Let's get rid of these, add it here. Yeah, because everything shouldn't be a constant, but this looks a little bit smaller than it should be. So let's scale it up a little bit by setting the size of the icon to 25. Now it looks bigger and it looks cool. The last thing I'm going to do here to say that the UI of application is done is to set the tooltip of the send button. So now if I press and hold, we see that we can see the message send.
I just believe that we could actually make a different background color for this instead of the blue background color. Maybe change it to the color that our application uses, which is from palette dot background color. and then make it a little bit transparent, less darker than it is right now. 0.7, that will make it lighter, and you see it looks better, far better than the gray blue. All right, let's see what we can do to this guy. Let's put it in a row widget so that we can add an icon here. This is the actual sender name, and then we need an icon which is going to represent an avatar, since the user doesn't actually upload a profile picture of themselves. So we're just going to add something to make it look nice instead. So I don't think I can see anything nice from the list, so I guess I'm going to probably install one. Let's see. All right, make this a constant. This is what it looks like. I don't like this icon at all, so I'll try a new icon. Head over to pop.dev to see if we can get a new icon pack for ourselves. So I'm going to search for ion icons, or whatever, however it's pronounced, and then I'll go to the install section and I'll just copy the installation command or code. Head over to VS Code and open your terminal. Then let's change my directory into the front end directory. If you're already in the front end directory, then you don't need to do this. Paste the code and then run it. This way it's going to install the package for us. And once the package is done, we can now use the package here. So I'm going to say iron icons dot, I need to remove it. I don't know if it's called person, but oh, it's called person. I need the circular icon here, and this is going to match exactly what I showed you at the beginning of this video. Let's see, it doesn't change. Let's restart the app, probably because I installed a new pack. All right, now it shows up and it's nice and looking good. I just need to remove the constants because I now need to create a condition for my color. I'm going to say is mine should, so if the message is mine, then I want the background color to be white, or the icon color instead to be white, or else the icon color should be the background color, which is palette, the background color. And now it looks nice, except for the fact that we need a little bit of space between the icon and the name. So let's say size box with a width of 5 pixels, and this is looking good with 5 pixels. So let's see if we can do the same thing for the actual message. Let's add some padding. It's going to be only on the left side of the text. 25 doesn't look good, maybe 28 instead. I just want it to be properly aligned with the name of the user, and I think this is looking perfect for now, or maybe it is actually perfect. All right, let me show you something that we need to fix. If I click on IO, keyboard, toggle soft keyboard, and I have the keyboard open here, you see that we don't get to see the input field at all again. And that's not the behavior we want. So what we're going to do is try to fix it. Let's go back to the input field. And then where we have the padding, I'm going to copy it with bottom, which is going to have a value of media query of context dot view inset dot bottom. So literally what this is going to do is try as much as possible to give us how much space has been taken away from the bottom, so that we can add it to the text input, and that pushes the text input to the top of the keypad. So right now it looks perfect, but I just need to add 20 pixels to it so that it doesn't stay right on top of the keyboard. So when I click on it, you can see how good it looks. This is perfect. All right, let's add a little bit of code before we wrap it up. So what I'm going to do here is create a new focus node, which I'm going to call chat input focus node. I haven't created it yet, so I'll go to the top of the page and then I'll create it there. The point is I want to click on the screen and make sure that the keyboard closes when I click on the screen. And this is how it's going to happen. So we go here and then we say late focus node. It's going to be equal to and paste the code, and then we come to the initial state, and then we're going to say chat input focus node is going to be equal to a focus node. We want to also dispose it. So every time you create something like this, you'd like to dispose it. So I'm going to create a dispose override of the dispose method and dispose the chat input focus node. This way everything looks good, and all we need to do now is collapse this, uncollapse this, and let's look at what we just did. Right, we have the chat input focus node here, and we are going to now wrap the entire scaffold in a gesture dictator, which should have an untap method because we want to apply the unfocus method here. So we're going to say chat input focus node dot unfocus. So basically, the idea is that whenever you tap on any part of the screen that isn't the input field, then we want to unfocus. Restart the application because you're going to have a crazy error, and once you restart, everything should work fine. So you can see when I click and I click out, it closes the input field, which is pretty cool. One most important thing that we need to do right now is to collect the information that the user inputs in the field. We're going to create a text editing controller, which we're going to call chat input text editing. No, maybe just chat input text or chat input controller. This is looking better. Then I will head over here and I'd like to initialize it here. And as well as dispose it properly. If it's not in use, if the widget closes, let's dispose it properly. We need to also add it here. If not, it's going to be useless because we're not using it. So controller, chat input controller, and we just have to restart the app because our application is always going to break. So every time something is late, we need to initialize it. So we need to make sure that we restart the application so that it's in sync. Now let's add the send message function. I will create the method, and inside of this method, what we're going to do, we will get the text that the user inputs. Instead of message, we call it text. And let's say text is equal to chat input controller dot text dot string. We want to remove leading and trailing spaces, leaving just the text. And then we're going to check if the text is empty. And if the text is empty, then we want to return and not even send the message at all. Now we're going to construct the message. We're going to actually create the message object, which is going to be final message equal to message. And then we're going to provide an ID for the message, which I'm going to use a package called UUID for, and we need to install it right away.
Let's head over to pop.dev where we're going to get the package that we need to install called UUID, and we'll search for it. This is going to give us the UUID package 3.0.7. Let's go to the installation section, copy the Flutter pulp add UUID code, then head over back to VS Code, open the terminal, clear the terminal, paste the code, and there you go. We can now run it. This is now installing the package. I think it's done installing already, so I can now import the library, then or package, and then I can import the message. Oh, I think the message is already imported. All I need to do is just provide the required data. So instead of version 5, let's go with version 4 of the package. And there should be a constant. Then I can now pass the actual message, which is the text, to the object. And then the last thing is now the sender. So who is the sender? The sender has to be the logged in user. That way we now have our message constructed properly for us. In this line, we're going to send the message here. That's what we actually going to do next time. Not now, actually. So let's see. Let's just print out. Probably let me use the log function instead. I like the log function from developer. That's developer because it makes the message stand out. So we're going to convert the message to a string because the method takes a string, and whenever we type in a message and we hit the send button, it's literally going to display the message on the console. That's the message down there. Let's try again. Send. All right, you see we get the message in the console, and the message has been constructed for us, which is nice.
All right, we are good. Let's see if we can make a little bit of change here to the keyboard. It's done here, and we want to change done to send instead. So we're going to use the text input action, and it has a value, a set of value that we can use from, and we're going to search for send, and that is exactly what we want to use. So if we close the keypad and open it again, then you're going to see that we have a send button instead of the done button now. Then we also want to capture the message when the button is clicked on, so that we can also send the message that way. So we're going to use the onset unsubmitted, which is going to give us a value that we don't need to use. We just need to call our send a message function, and that will try to send the message for us, which is perfect. Come on. Let's add the message to the list of messages so that at least we get something on the screen to show that we've actually sent the message. Even though we're not really sending the message yet, we actually need our server to send the message. So this message doesn't get sent out, but we want to actually see that we've sent a message, right? So we're going to add the message to the list of messages that we have here. Then we're going to call set state, which is going to do a little the rebuild of the widget for us, which is the magic. And then we also want to clear the input field because once I send a message, I don't want the message to remain on the input field. I'd like to clear the input field. So we're going to say chat input controller dot clear, because the controller has the function or method called clear that can allow us clear the input field. Then we would want to keep the chat input on, because if we don't keep the chat input on focus, the keyboard is going to close and then you have to open the keyboard all over again, which we don't want. We want the user to be able to click out to close the keyboard themselves. So we're going to request that the focus is on. So if I send, I still have the keyboard on, and the message is now added to the list of messages that we have, that we had coded previously. Let's see, there's another problem you need to see. If I type in more messages, it goes way past the viewport. I think you get the idea, because now we have to manually scroll the screen to see the rest of the messages. Scroll the list of messages to see what we have down, which is not the behavior we want. So what we're going to do is create a new, add a new functionality to this. We're going to say we want you to auto scroll to the last message. And this is how we're going to do it. Maybe I'm going to create a new function called move to last message. And let's create this function, please. Auto. All right, create method. And then should it be asynchronous? No, I doubt. No, it shouldn't be asynchronous. Let's go back to the top of our code and see if we can make a new controller for us. And this is going to be a scroll controller, which I'm going to have in a variable called chat room scroll controller. Then, as usual, if it's late, then we have to initialize it in the initial state of the application and then dispose it as well. Then we need to now add the scroll controller to the list view here, because the list view is scrollable, and that is the part that we actually scroll when the message goes past the viewport. Let's collapse this, and then here we're going to say chat room scroll controller. Let's bring this down, and then I want to animate to. The controller has the animate to method that will allow scroll. So we're going to say chat room scroll controller dot position dot maximum extent. So we want to scroll to the maximum extent, which is the end of the scroll view. And then we're going to set a duration because it's an animation. So let's say 300 milliseconds, and then a curve of probably is in. Let's search for it in the list. Is in out, yeah. And this is perfect, I guess. There's only one way to find out. All right, we're calling the method here. Let's change the comment. I want the comment to be auto scroll to the last message, and that's clear enough. All right, so let's restart the application because you can't use something that hasn't been initialized. So let's initialize it by restarting the app, and then when I type in, let's type in messages until it goes past the viewport to see if it automatically scrolls. Wow, it didn't scroll. Oh, it now scrolls. All right. All right, it scrolls. All right, it works perfectly fine. And now you get the point. I think this is where we caught the line for this video. I didn't expect this video to be this long. So let's cut it short here. And I'll see you in the next video where we're going to build the server side application. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It's Emmanuel, and you're watching Go Full Stack.